For Tariq, Brayden, Effie, and Kane, the stakes are high. After Mecca was killed by Monet at the conclusion of Season 2, the group has been given the assignment of moving the drug stock that was left over. Noma, a new cast member for Power Book 2, Ghost this season, gave them this order. She portrays Mecca's employer and fiancé, the menacing ruler of a vast empire. It has been a little challenging to organize everything and make sure that everything gets done because Mecca's remaining supply of drugs is greater than Tariq, Brayden, Effie, and Kane have ever had to move in their entire lifetimes, since their lives are in grave danger. Even though the majority of Episode 2 was devoted to organizing this operation, Kane's realization that Lorenzo, his father, was responsible for Zeke's death occurred at the very end. Even though Lorenzo initially disputes it, he later admits that it was an accident, but Kane doesn't care about that. Instead, he views it as an opportunity to take over the family business forcibly, which is precisely what he does. After failing to shift enough of Mecca's merchandise, Noma's associates threaten Tariq, Brayden, Effie, and Kane in Human Capital, the third episode of Power Book 2, Ghost Season 3. If they don't bring $1 million in cash to their next appointment, the associate threatens to pursue their loved ones. This compels the team to devise a fresh strategy to move the product along as quickly as feasible. Tariq and Brayden create a website that enables employees of the Weston family business to purchase the product anonymously and have it assembled so that it can be smuggled into the company's building. To fill his position, Kane and Drew decide to take out a significant city connection. Finally, Effie is now selling merchandise at Stansfield with Tariq's approval. The group's plan appears to be on track at this point, but they are unaware that walls are closing in on them as a result of Cooper Sacks, Jenny Sullivan, and Blanca Rodriguez's probe. The following are some of the most important lessons learned from Human Capital, the third episode of Season 3. Let's start this week's Power Book 2. Ghost recaps off with a little humor since the previous two have been a little too somber. There is no justification for Tariq's continued lack of a personal vehicle after more than 2 seasons of the program. Even Effie has a vehicle, after all. Even though the Toyota Corolla is rather dated, at least it's something. We have no means of knowing Tariq's mode of transportation in New York. He may travel by subway, but no scenes are filmed there because he's an avid walker, or he may travel by foot to all of his locations, both near and far. However, I find it beyond amazing that his carless self mustered the courage to make fun of Effie for having a working car, and I'm happy she was prepared with a joke for him in return. Tariq can undoubtedly buy himself a vehicle if he can buy himself pricey suits and watches, organize complex drug sales schemes, and commit murder. Just get a vehicle, Tariq. It doesn't have to be a Rolls-Royce or a Lamborghini Urus, for the love of God. We have seen Tariq, Effie, and Kane perpetrate some of the most horrifying acts of violence in Power Book 2, Ghosts. We'd have to assume that they are able to do this because of the life or death circumstances that pertain to them in this drug game. But Brayden isn't one of them. We are aware that Brayden chose to play the game rather than having to in order to live. However, when he is required to handle business in a manner that his colleagues have been able to, Brayden gives up and seeks an escape. Brayden surrendered when instructed to murder Lauren, forcing Effie to step in and take care of business, or so she believed. Because Brayden is the only white child present and won't be associated with the Tejada family, Kane uses him to kill the Russian connection in this week's episode. Although he agrees to do it, Brayden again backs out when it's time to finish the task, leaving Tariq to handle the situation. Kane finds himself in a difficult situation as a result of people accusing him of starting the shooting because they thought he was Tariq, which would not have occurred if Brayden had followed instructions. After failing to accomplish the mission as instructed, Kane holds Brayden at gunpoint. He permits Brayden to leave, but only on the condition that he understands he will ultimately have to commit a murder because he still owes Kane a body. This situation reminds me of the often asked issue of whether or not Brayden is built for the game. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. Right now, Kane is genuinely feeling like himself. Kane succeeded in taking control of the family company after a protracted campaign to ascend to the top that included both respectful and disrespectful tactics. As soon as Kane realized Lorenzo was responsible for Zeke's death, he blackmailed him into handing over the kingdom. It was a very dishonorable way to handle the situation, particularly since Monet is still mourning and looking for the murderer. However, in Kane's defense, Lorenzo dared him to track down Zeke's killer, and Kane did so. Because Lorenzo believed Kane wasn't ready for it, he long delayed giving Kane the coveted right-hand man job. Kane is the group's muscle, but the position he so desperately desires requires brains, and he is unquestionably not that. Kane advises the Tejadas to eliminate a rival drug family that they have known since they were children. Even though it would accomplish their short-term objectives, they wouldn't have the resources to wage a battle in the city because it would draw too much attention to them. Fortunately, Drew, who has been Lorenzo's right-hand man for a while, offers a better strategy that entails eliminating the city's primary drug supplier so that the Tejadas can swiftly take over the role and move Noma and Mecha's leftover supply. We can assume that Kane will continue to be in control, and there's no telling what careless choices he'll make in the future as long as he has Zeke's murder to hang over Lorenzo. Drew was thankfully present to prevent matters from getting worse. While the NYPD and the federal government are putting pressure on Monet and the Tejadas as a whole, Monet has received a hint that they're up to something despite not knowing the exact nature of their probe. This is due to Detective Kevin Whitman's suspicion that Monet is to blame for Carrie Milgram's death, who was the late professor's erstwhile lover. He goes to any lengths to look into the crime, Monet, and the Tejadas as a whole. He consequently becomes engaged in the RICO case that Jenny Sullivan and Blanca Rodriguez are trying to establish against Tarek, Davis McLean, and the Tejadas. Thank you for viewing and please consider subscribing.